We're going to bring in former Vice President Joe Biden, who is speaking right now. Let's listen in.
My time running? Whoa, my time's running. I'm sorry. Hey, thank you, everybody. I never like to cut off cheers, but my time's running here. Welcome, South Carolina, to hearing from all of us, and we're happy all to be here. The only thing I miss is my buddy Fritz Hollings. He was one of my mentors, and I'm sorry he's not here. Look, you all know in your bones that this election is more important than any one you've ever been engaged in. We have a president who has promoted hate and division, encourages white supremacy, embraces dictators, in fact, goes around the world weakening our alliances. And look, our children are watching. They're watching. And it matters what presidents say and do. Barack Obama, they watched and they emulated. They wanted to be like him. 4 more years of Donald Trump will permanently change the character of this country. We can't let that happen. We have to beat Donald Trump as the overwhelming imperative we have. And folks, we have to begin to rebuild the backbone of this nation. Hard-working people, middle-class people. Ladies and gentlemen, Wall Street did not build America. You build America. Average people given a chance build America. And right now, the poor are getting poorer, and from the bottom are falling out of the middle class. Income inequity is at an all-time high, and made worse by Trump's tax cuts and enormous giveaways to the top 0.1%, let alone 1%. And it's time we start to reward work over wealth. We need big and bold ideas. And folks, on day one, I will move to eliminate Trump's tax cuts as well for the super wealthy, and literally cut by close to $400 to $500 billion the tax loopholes built in that have no social redeeming value, and put that money to good use. Health care. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to save and build upon the Affordable Care Act, not jettison it. 20 million people are covered that weren't before. Over 130 million people with pre-existing conditions. And I was proud every day to serve with Barack, but let me tell you, never prouder than the day that he got done what no other president was able to do. And folks, we have to finish the job. Under my plan, whether you're covered by your employer on your own or not at all, you will be able to buy into an option, a public health care option like Medicare, and you'll be able to have it, and if you don't have the money, you'll automatically be enrolled in that. We have to guarantee that the poor are in fact covered, because they can be, and it's within our interest, and will save billions of dollars. Ladies and gentlemen, education. 12 years is no longer enough for the 21st century of education. And folks, that's why I want to triple Title I funding for schools in distress. And by the way, we can afford to do this. It moves from 15 to $45 billion. We need universal pre-K. We need to raise teachers' pay. We have to fully fund special education. And we have to double the number of school psychologists, guidance counselors, nurses, because teachers can't do it all on their own. And folks, we can easily afford free community college, cutting in half the cost of 4-year colleges for everyone qualified to get in. And further than that, we have to do something and reduce the student debt, which I don't have time to go into now, but we will. Child care. I know what it's like to be a single parent. I was one for 5 years and I had a lot of help. I can't imagine what it's like for people who don't have the kind of help I had with my family. And I think we should provide an $8,000 tax credit for every single person who has a child and needs child care. Ladies and gentlemen, climate change. We have to restore what Brock and I did in terms of fuel economy and doubling fuel economy, as well as dealing with coal-fired plants. We can double offshore. My plan calls for doubling offshore wind energy by 2030, providing a $400 billion in the next 10 years for clean energy research and innovation, twice as much as we spent to going to the moon. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have to immediately hold polluters accountable. You saw the headline in today's paper, in your paper. It says, South Carolina, $2 billion problem, pipes like tissue paper, threatening public health. It is unacceptable that that occurred. We can afford it. And it's not just in South Carolina, it's around America. Criminal justice reform. There are too many people in prison, too many black men, and I might add, black women in prison. And look, in our administration, we started to address the problem. Our reforms helped reduce federal prisons by 38,000 people came out. And then we passed the supportive school discipline initiative to break the school-to-prison pipeline. But we need to pass Congressman Bobby Scott from Virginia's Safe Justice Act. But I met with him. We got to add a few things that I've been proposing. No more mandatory minimums, period. End private prisons, which we did in our bill, period. Fund my drug courts to about $1 billion a year. No one should be going to jail because they are addicted. They should be going into rehabilitation, not to jail. Bail reform. Just because you don't have the money shouldn't mean you can be languish in jail. Ladies and gentlemen, no juvenile and adult prisons. Mandatory treatment in jail for people who also suffer from addiction. Ladies and gentlemen, decriminalize marijuana and automatically expunge records for those who have been convicted. And by the way, instead of teaching people how to be better criminals in prison, we should be educating people in prison. It's in our interest to do so. Automatic restoration of rights once your sentence is served, meaning not only you can vote, but you qualify for every program, including Pell Grants, to go on and get your education. It makes no sense. Look, folks, we have to unite this country. We have to unite it. That's why the only way we're going to be able to harness this. Look, we're on the cusp of major changes in cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, so much more. We can do this by doubling NIH's budget, which is totally within our reach, and set up a new project I proposed, like what happened in the Defense Department, to find how to come up with the whole internet. Provide billions of dollars for basic research. I call it ARPA-H, meaning healthcare. Focus on research and take all the technology we have to focus on solving problems which within our reach, like the Biden Cancer Initiative and the moonshot. Look, I've beaten the NRA before. We ought to ban assault weapons again, which I did, limit magazines. And by the way, use technology so you cannot fire a gun unless it has your biometric prints on it. And that means no problem in terms of the Second Amendment, and you have to pass the background checks, which I put in law as a consequence of the Brady Amendment. Everybody. Folks, science and technology can fundamentally reshape our lives. I've never been more optimistic about this country. We ought to pick our heads up. I remember the phrase from John Kennedy, who wanted to go to the moon. He said, because we are unwilling to postpone. I am unwilling to postpone any longer the potential of this nation. It's totally within our power to change it. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
And I'd like to welcome,
ladies and gentlemen.
Joining me now for his first cable news sit-down interview since announcing his White House bid is former Vice President Joe Biden. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Good to see you, Rev.
Good to see you. Let me ask you, before we get into some of what you said in the speech, the President announced today that he's going to have a 2-week delay on his announcement that he was sending ICE in after hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants. Nancy Pelosi called him last night and asked him not to do it. He's going to do a 2-week delay. What's your reaction?
He shouldn't do it at all. And you see, they're in the Ninth Circuit right now, arguing that kids who are being detained by ICE should not even have blankets, toothbrushes, and the rest. They can sleep on floors. They're actually making that argument today. And not only is that cruel, but imagine what it says to the rest of the world about who we are. Look, we should immediately let the dreamers in, period. We should be moving in a direction of making sure there's a path to citizenship for the 11 million people who are here, overstay, and most overstay their visas, not come across the border. We should be moving in a direction of making sure that we change fundamentally the access to in terms of asylum by putting more judges on the border. We should be not getting rid of my $750 billion proposal, $1 million proposal that we put together bipartisan at the end of the last administration that provides money for El Salvador, Guatemala, and in order to change the environment where they're there, improve their education, end their criminal justice, the way have a real criminal justice system, et cetera. And so these are the things we should be doing. Look, you come from a state that has a big old statue. It says, "Send me your," and it goes on.
Right.
That's who we are. That's who we are. And this is absolutely mindless, what he's doing.
I heard in your speech, you got into detail about how to deal with the tax code and what it would do in terms of money, which means a lot, particularly in a state like South Carolina, huge black population, huge population that needs jobs, infrastructure development. Why is this so critical to you, and will this be a main theme in your campaign?
It's a gigantic theme. Look, here's the deal. You know my state. What people don't know here, we're the 8th largest black population, percent of population in America. I'm from those, I know those communities. They're getting killed on the environmental stuff. All the bad stuff's happening. They have wooden pipes that are, in fact, leaking, as the headline in the South Carolina paper said today, like tissue paper. What's going on here? They're the ones where the refineries are built next to, where the smog is occurring, where all this stuff is dropping. And so here's the deal. The thing is that the idea, as we strengthen the African-American community, throughout this country, what we do is we not only make it better for them, we make it better for all of America. And to those people who are cynical about this, I want to point out, we save billions of dollars in the process, billions of dollars. And look, Rev, we can do this. I'm not making these numbers up. Mine are not, let's make everything free for everybody all the time. We can send everybody to community college for free, cutting in half the cost of college by just adding $6 billion to their budget. Of the $1.6 trillion in tax loopholes, you have to eliminate one. It's called stepped-up basis. It is only $17 billion. Just one. You can change it all. We should be making sure that the corporate tax is 28%, not what it was too high at 30-some, but 20%. And look at all the corporations are paying zero federal tax. This is within our wheelhouse. It's really within our wheelhouse.
Criminal justice reform. You spoke for us, National Action Network, Martin Luther King Day this year with Martin III.
Yeah.
And you talked about how you had one position in '94 with the crime bill that you now see differently, but you responded at that time when many of the black congressmen and others were there. And you want to see the system work more fairly now.
Bingo.
Tell us about it.
When that bill passed, the Black Caucus voted for it, a majority. The only people against it were Republicans, because it had $9 billion in there for prevention. It had drug courts, which I call for $400 million to divert people from prison. But now, look, things have changed. Things have changed. And what we should be doing is what Barack and I started in our administration. He released 38,000 prisoners from the federal prison system. 92%, you have over almost 1,800,000 people in state, county, and center prisons. You have less than 200,000, it doesn't mean 2 million, in federal prisons. We should reduce that population. No one should go to jail for a drug offense. They should go to rehabilitation. That's the smartest thing for them. When people get out of jail, the idea we give them $25 and a bus ticket to go under a bridge, but they don't qualify for public housing, they don't qualify for food, they don't qualify for Pell Grants. That's crazy. We should be doing the opposite. You know, Rev, you've been calling, I've been calling for a long time. There should be job training in prisons, not training people how to be criminals. There's so much we can do, and it's within our capacity to do it. That's the interesting thing. And I think what's happening now is I think that Donald Trump may have reawakened sensibilities in this country to say, whoa, maybe we can do this now, just like our generation was awakened when Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy were assassinated. Whole generation said, I'm back in, man. These millennials, they get it, Rev.
Yeah.
And now they want to get engaged.
You started the campaign with a video talking about Charlottesville and the division in the country. And I watched you close up during the Obama years fight, even sometimes internal fights in the staff for same-sex marriage and a lot of tough stuff. And you and I disagreed in the 90s, and I said, wow, this This Biden is a real go-to-the-mat kind of fighter. And this week you got into it about a statement you made about racists and segregationists. And don't you understand some of the hurt feelings there? You call Cory Booker.
Sure I do.
And you have Mayor de Blasio and others calling you to apologize. Many things I've said that I didn't intend, Mrs. King said to me, you can't say things that hurt people. It hurts when you talk about boy. It means something different to us. It hurts when you call a racist like you normalize. That's not the Biden I got to know. Don't you understand that?
No, I do fully understand. That's not what I said, though. They didn't print the whole deal. You know what I mean? The context of this was totally different. And by the way, the fact of the matter is, I ran against all those folks. I got on the Judiciary Committee to defeat the man who headed the committee. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act 25 years, not 5. We finally got to the point when I was a senior member of the Democratic on the Judiciary Committee to get 98 votes to extend the Voting Rights Act. Let me tell you something. You got to deal with what's in front of you. And what was in front of you was a bunch of racists, and we had to defeat them. And as I said in that statement, that the fact of the matter is the meanest man in the world I've ever dealt with in the United States Senate was a guy from Georgia named Herman Talmadge. And I included Jim Eastland. But this is, I do understand the consequence of the word boy. But it wasn't said in any of that context at all.
But you understand, they would call you son. They would never call me son. They would only call me boy.
No, but they called Teddy Kennedy boy. That was the distinction. The reason he called me senator was to demean me more because son, because he said, I'm not even qualified to be in the Senate. I'm not old enough. I'm a kid. Mm-hmm. I'm a kid.
To those that are listening, and those that have respected you, but that were hurt by that, what do you say to them? I've heard your justification and you're explaining it, but you're saying to them you understand the feeling.
I do understand the feeling. Look, as you know, Rev, you know about me in Delaware. I came up in that community. I came up in the black church. I came up because that's where we sit down to organize, to go out and march. I was the only white employee in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, in terms of being a lifeguard and then a park director, because I chose to be there, and I learned more there than anywhere. All the folks who got those jobs, or good jobs, were athletes, and I was not a bad athlete, but I was the only white employee. And the fact of the matter is, I remember one time sitting in there, and a guy named Jamie Rolls, a great athlete, and he turned to me and he said, "You have a jerry can, Joe?" And I said, "A jerry can? You mean a big 5-gallon?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "No, I don't have. What do you need a jerry can for? I'm going to see my grandmother." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You don't understand. I can't stop at any gas station." He lives in North Carolina. I got an education up close and personal in a way that I didn't have anything remotely as tough as any black man or woman I've ever served with. But I did get here I was in the middle of a city that was, all these folks I knew, that I think there was a total of 14 African Americans and me. They're in the middle of a city. It took me time to realize as a young man, they're in the middle of a city and didn't know anybody white. They'd ask me questions like, what's it like for the A, B, C, or D? And so, I am fully aware of that. And to the extent that anybody thought that I meant something different, that is not what I intended. And it'd be wrong for anybody to intend that.
Iran, I have to ask you about that before we let you go. The whole back and forth with this president, sending out one signal, actually having people in the air headed that way. Then he pulls back and he tells this story that he heard 150 people would die and he decided not to do it. How do you react to his story? Because some people are saying the story is unbelievable. And how do you react to the seemingly no policy? We don't even have a Secretary of Defense.
Look, as you know, I served as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee a long time. I've met virtually every major world leader in the last 35 years and met them on their first name basis. Some are absolute tyrants like Putin and others that he embraces. But I also sat on the Intelligence Committee, and I also was, as you know, did a major piece of intelligence operations for the President of the United States when I was there. If, in fact, the military did not brief him in the beginning what was happening, I just don't believe it. The military doesn't do that. They sit down and say, Mr. President, you want us to do A? Here's what we think will happen. This is the consequence. Your decision, Mr. President. We recommend or not. But the idea that they would say to him when he said, go ahead and bomb and take out whatever they were going to take out, and not tell him what the consequences would be, not possible. Simply not possible. The military does not function that way, whether or not there is a Secretary of Defense.
Wow. All right.
I really mean it. Not a joke, Rev. Not possible.
Well, thank you for coming by. Thank you for this first sit-down interview on Cable TV News.
And thank you
and I always talk blunt and frank, and you always kind of make me listen to you.
Well, I've always listened to you. You know that, man. You've done a lot more than I've ever done for the civil rights movement. But I tell you what, it's we owe you, pal.
All right. Thank you. Vice
Thanks.
President Joe Biden.